Hi, Janice.
How are you?
Good. You ready to talk about 4 reasons millennials need estate planning even more than baby boomers?
I'm ready.
Because you are a millennial, Janice, I think this is a
Well,
very appropriate article.
I mean, all right, let's look at this and break it down a little. Technically, I think depending on where you look, isn't it millennial like 1980, 81? And I was born early 80s. So I think I identify more with the Generation X.
I feel like a Gen Xer myself, too. But I think we're both at least close enough to be kind of on the cusp. I don't know.
We are. But I'm just going to go with Gen X.
Yeah,
Only
nice.
because, all right, you start out in this article talking about there are definitely some thoughts about millennials. Uh,
Hmm.
that may not be true, but we definitely have to talk about their estate planning. They are a different breed, and they have to set up differently.
Yeah, cool. So get us started on the 4 reasons millennials need estate planning.
Absolutely. So millennials, as we've kind of mentioned, they grew up in a world that's just distinct from every generation that's come before them. Uh, for example, number one, millennials have more pets. Boy, it's very true. About half the general populations have pets in the home, but the number for millennials is much higher. So almost 75% of people in their 30s have a dog, and about half have a cat. Now, if you're in my situation, you have a lot of both of those. Okay, so then there we go. Maybe I am identifying with the millennial a little bit more.
Gotcha.
Okay, case in point. I've,
Yeah,
but
so
what?
yeah,
But
the
we're talking
pet
about pet
ownership thing.
ownerships,
Yeah, so
right?
that's obviously, I mean, the explosion of companies like Petco and PetSmart is kind of indicative of this sort of movement. But what's the legal impact? A lot of millennial clients care a great deal about their pets, and they want to make sure their pets are cared for if anything should happen for them, to the owner. So there's things you can do about that in your will. One example would be setting up a pet trust, or at the very least, some sort of letters of instructions to make sure that whoever is in charge upon your passing knows to go scoop up your little furry whatever. I'm not really a pet guy, so your little
I
little
know.
mongrel or whatever, and feed and care for them. But yeah, there are things you need to
But
do, include in your estate plan, as high level as a trust, but or as low level as letters of instructions. Yeah.
absolutely, and we have talked about this before. You definitely want to speak to someone first before you just leave them all of your animals. You'll definitely, right? You should have that talk with someone and make sure that that's something that they want to take on, because in our case, that would be a pretty large herd that they would be bringing into their home.
Yeah.
But you want to have,
Nobody leave me your
set up.
cats. I'm allergic. Please.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't want ours? No, but that's important. You want to make sure they're going to the right place, and that is very important. Number two, completely different, is millennials have more digital assets. Geez, everything is digital now. Everything. Have you printed out a photo in years? I mean,
Yes.
honestly, you have? Okay. Well, everything's online. I mean, we've got thousands of photos online. You're talking about, you've got your, even Facebook, your social medias, your websites. It's big. It's important. So what about your digital estate planning concerns? So what are your options for that?
From the estate side of things, this is definitely in flux. And what I mean by that is, so we do a lot of probate, meaning we help folks settle up final affairs after somebody's passed away. And, for years it used to be the process would be to collect the mail, the United States Post Office mail, to see the statements and see what's coming in and to get an idea of what needs to be done, right? But with more and more people signing up for paperless statements and email notifications, it's more important to, rather than getting control of the post office mail, it's pretty important to get control of email or other electronic or digital communications. And the thing is, the Yahoos and Gmails and Hotmails and whoever else is out there. I know I'm dating myself by naming some of those older ones, but they're not really well equipped for this. There's a whole process for banks, Janice, that where we send in
Right.
letters, testamentary, death certificate, and a letter of instruction, and for the most part, it goes through smoothly. Not always, but there's a system in place. The tech companies don't have those systems in place. Or if they do, they're very poorly executed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like, are they working on that? Have you found it to be?
Slowly, very slowly,
Okay.
but it's still not smoothed out yet. So getting access to email after death is still kind of a pain.
Is that something? Here's a question for you. Is it something you could just leave your password to somebody? Like, for example, I always write mine down somewhere. Just, heaven forbid my husband can get in everything. Everything's online. I didn't think of that. Our banking and so I write everything down. I stick it somewhere just in case. Is that helpful? Would you find that to be helpful?
That's a solution. I've had clients just write down all their passwords and put it in like a safe deposit box for their executor. That is a solution. Yes, that might actually be better than, at least as of now, dealing with Facebook and Google. They don't have phone numbers. There's really no way to get in touch with them.
Right.
So,
Right. They're just there, but you can't talk to them.
right.
Yeah. So maybe that's just an idea. I mean, I write them down, stick them somewhere, and give them to someone just in case.
There are some digital password. What do you call them? Lock boxes.
Yes. Yes.
So there are solutions. But I'm not at this point prepared to recommend any one. It kind of still depends on everyone's different situations.
I think everyone's still learning this whole topic.
Yeah.
So number 3, millennials expect but won't necessarily receive an inheritance. So millennials are expecting that when their family members pass or loved ones, that they'll receive an inheritance. I think they might be almost banking on that they will receive something. However, that might not be the case. The baby boomers aren't expected to leave anything to their millennials after they pass. So what do you think about that? Do you think it's changing the dynamics?
So I'm going to give the exact stats. In 2017, there was a survey conducted where 68%, so over 2/3 of millennials, said that they expect to receive an inheritance from their parents. But on the flip side, only 40% of those same parents said they expect to leave anything to their kids. That's a pretty big gap of people who are not going to get anything that they're expecting.
That is huge.
On top, so this actually seems to be more of like a retirement planning tip, but it does relate to estate planning in that if you're a millennial and you think, oh yeah, my estate might be in the taxable range, over $5 million because my folks are going to leave me so much. You might want to sit down and have a conversation with your parents before you work on those expectations. Or if you're thinking, I want to give $100,000 to each of my siblings or, I don't know, nieces and nephews, thinking that money will be coming in from your parents.
Right.
Just have that conversation to make sure you have a realistic expectation of what your estate will be, including future expected inheritances.
Right. Yeah, that seems like that could be a really big change if you're expecting and then not, and then the amounts. And then lastly, millennials just simply aren't getting married. So this is according to a report from is it Pew? P-E-W?
Pew. Yeah.
Pew Research Center.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Millennials are far more likely to never get married as their grandparents. There's a lot of reasons for this. But of the roughly 18 million Americans that are cohabitating outside of marriage, roughly half of those are under 30. So when it comes to estate planning, typically, as you can add in, you leave it to your spouse would be your first method. So if you don't have a spouse, you have to set up for then where does it go?
Yeah. So we talked about this in one of our earlier talks. The reasons why millennials seem to be delaying at least getting married. I think they were prioritizing retirement or home buying. But so
vacationing. True story.
So getting married, having somebody be your legal spouse creates a lot of default rights and responsibilities that you wouldn't otherwise have with a girlfriend, partner, or what have you. And that's, I don't want to spend any time on this, but that's partly why the gay marriage thing is such a big issue, because it does create default rights as opposed to having to sort of make them up on the fly with documents and powers of attorneys and whatnot. Yeah. So
absolutely. So
that's the reason why getting married, as opposed to just staying boyfriend, girlfriend, or what have you, will have significant estate planning impacts. I guess I'm just repeating myself, but yes, it creates default rights as over bodily remains, healthcare decisions, inheritance rights, divorce rights, prenup rights, all those financial and healthcare rights are built in once you've made a made somebody legal.
The commitment. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you're not married, can you, I guess when you're talking over with your attorney, set it up for your partner, whether you're not married or not? I guess you could set it up.
It's possible, but it's more complicated.
Yeah.
Right? Why not just take the default set of secured rules? So if your partner is in an accident and is in the hospital, you can either walk in and say, I'm the spouse, or you can walk in and say, I'm the girlfriend, and here are the 3 different documents I have to prove that I have the right to talk about her healthcare decisions.
Right.
Right?
Right. And it makes it harder.
Exactly.
What if you have no one at all? Then you would have to decide where that goes. Right. Like you said, nieces, nephews, family, charitable gifts. Right. So there's a lot to think about if you aren't in that situation.
Cool. All right, Janice. So that's the 4 reasons millennials need estate planning, maybe even more than baby boomers. I like this. This was interesting to learn about the pets and the digital stuff.
I do like that in the beginning I said I was definitely not a millennial, yet I identified with most of what we spoke about today.
Very cool. Very introspective. Very good.
Yes. I have learned. Yes, it's my pets.
Cool.
But thank you, Anthony.
Yeah, sure. Everyone else, feel free to read the whole article at anthonyspark.com. Otherwise, we'll talk to you next time. Bye, Janice.
Talk soon.
Bye now.